In the summer of 1943, Warsaw was a city living under a shroud of terror. German boots echoed across cobblestones. Public executions were daily occurrences. Yet beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight, operated the largest secret army in occupied Europe, the Polish Home Army. Their leader was General Stefan Rowecki, a shadow commander whose face was known only to a trusted inner circle. The Gestapo had spent 3 years hunting him. They had deployed thousands of informants, tapped wires, and tortured suspects. Nothing worked. Rowecki was invisible until the morning of June 30th. At 9:30 a.m., an elite squad of Nazi secret police surrounded an unassuming apartment building on Spiskier Street. They didn't break down doors randomly. They didn't search the floor plan. They walked directly to apartment number 10, drew their weapons, and pulled the general out into the sunlight. The Gestapo hadn't cracked the code through brilliant intelligence. They didn't catch him through a mistake. The address had been handed to them by a decorated 19-year-old female resistance hero, a woman wearing the Cross of Valour pinned to her chest by the commander she just sold. Rewind 18 months. Siedelte, east of Warsaw. Blanka Kaczorowska was not a street thug or a desperate criminal. She was the daughter of a high-ranking military judge, educated, cultured, deeply connected to the pre-war establishment. When the Panzers rolled across the border in September 1939, she threw herself into the underground. She worked in German military facilities, collecting intelligence, risking her life daily. In late 1941, the Gestapo caught her. They raided her room. They found incriminating documents, including letters from a German officer she had targeted for information. Under normal circumstances, that meant a basement cell, a firing squad, or a transport train to Auschwitz. Instead, 3 days later, Blanka walked out of Gestapo headquarters completely free. She returned to her resistance handlers with a simple story. She told them she convinced the interrogators the documents were swept up by accident while cleaning. The resistance believed her. They didn't just accept her story, they honored her. General Rowecki signed the order conferring the Cross of Valour upon her for bravery under pressure. At the ceremony, surrounded by men living on borrowed time, she stood beside another rising star of the intelligence branch, Ludwik Kalkstein. He was brilliant. He was charismatic. He led Group H, an elite intelligence cell operating directly out of resistance headquarters. They looked like the future of the nation. In reality, they were the fuse that would incinerate it. Spring 1942, Kalkstein vanished. The Gestapo picked him up on Sucha Avenue. Inside the concrete interrogation rooms, under conditions that broke the strongest minds, Kalkstein made a calculation. He wouldn't die for a lost cause. He agreed to flip. When the Germans released him back onto the streets of Warsaw in August, he didn't run. He searched for Blanka. When he found her in a safe house, he didn't pretend. He laid the truth on the table. He was working for the Gestapo. He asked her to join him. She didn't reach for a pistol. She didn't alert her handlers. In November 1942, in a secluded church on the outskirts of Warsaw, they were married in complete secret. From that moment, the resistance was operating inside a glass house. Blanka kept her maiden name. She kept her separate apartment. She attended underground meetings, collected lists of couriers, learned the locations of weapons caches, and documented real names. Then, during quiet evenings with her husband, she passed it all over. The Gestapo opened 3 new files. Kalkstein became Agent V97. Blanka became Agent V98. Her brother-in-law became Agent V100. They weren't just informants reacting to pressure. They operated a systematic commercial enterprise of betrayal, earning cash bounties for every Polish patriot delivered to the gallows. By mid-1943, Blanka breached the ultimate boundary. She secured a placement inside the Studies Bureau of the Home Army Headquarters, the nervous system of the resistance. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. In December 1943, a single stroke of her pen led to the simultaneous arrest of 14 senior officers. 5 were executed within 48 hours, including Jadwiga Krasika, the head of propaganda and Blanka's direct personal supervisor. Blanka walked past the empty desk of her murdered mentor every morning without dropping a tear. The ultimate target, however, had already fallen. When General Rowecki was pulled out of his Spiskier Street safe house, the Home Army Counterintelligence Division launched a silent, furious internal investigation. It took months of tracing leaks, checking meeting schedules and cross-referencing safehouse burnouts. The thread led straight to the Golden Couple. An underground military tribunal met in secret. The verdict was unanimous: death for high treason. In June 1944, a counterintelligence execution squad tracked down Agent V-100 in the street and eliminated him. Next, they moved on the apartment on Śniegawka Street, where Kalkstein and Blanka were hiding. They kicked down the door with weapons drawn. The apartment was empty. Blanka was pregnant. The Gestapo had extracted her hours earlier, placing her under armed protection in a private hospital wing outside the city. The executioners found only cold teacups on the table. January 1945. The Third Reich collapsed into rubble. The Red Army surged across Poland. For most collaborators, the arrival of the Soviets meant a rope over a tree limb or a bullet in a basement. Blanka did not panic. She adapted. She divorced Kalkstein, shed her past, and resurfaced in the destroyed city of Łódź. Her father, the pre-war military judge, had managed to secure a high-ranking position in the new Communist Supreme Military Court. Under the umbrella of her father's political influence, Blanka erased Agent V-98. She enrolled at the University of Łódź, studying art history. She lived quietly. She took a military judge as her common-law husband. She landed a prestigious research job at the State Institute for the Study of Folk Art in Warsaw. For 8 years, she lived as a respected academic, walking the same streets where her former comrades lay in mass graves. Then came 1952. The Stalinist regime began scrubbing wartime archives, looking for former Gestapo assets. Blanka's protective web fell apart when her father was purged from the judiciary. In late December 1952, secret police broke into her Warsaw apartment. During interrogation, she tried her old strategy. She wept. She blamed her dead marriage. She claimed she was merely a naive wife who talked out of turn to a dominant husband. The court didn't buy it. In 1953, she was sentenced to life imprisonment for fascist collaboration. Yet the story of Blanka Kaczorowska does not end in a prison cell. Inside Fordon Women's Prison, she adapted once more. To reduce her sentence, she signed on as a prison informant, turning in fellow inmates who spoke out against the regime. By 1958, after serving just 5.5 years of a life sentence, she was released on parole. The Communist secret police gave her a new codename, Agent Katarzyna. For 10 years, she spied on Polish dissidents. In 1968, the regime granted her an official exit visa. She moved to France, settling in Paris. She took jobs as an art restorer, a receptionist, and eventually a caregiver in a retirement facility. In 1983, inside a care home in the Loire Valley, a Polish administrator processing residency paperwork stopped on a file. The paperwork claimed the elderly resident was a victim of communist political persecution, but when the administrator looked up the maiden name on the original Polish birth record, the truth exploded into view. Blanka was exposed. She was fired immediately and quietly transferred to another facility in Bogancy. She lived out her final years in quiet comfort, cared for by nuns, watching the sun set over the French countryside. She died on August 25, 2002, at the age of 79. She was buried in a clean, quiet municipal plot outside Paris. General Rowecki's body was never found. The bodies of the 14 officers she betrayed remain in unidentified mass graves. Blanka Kaczorowska died of old age, proving a chilling truth about the wreckage of war. Sometimes the monsters don't face justice. They simply change their names and outlive their victims.